We have all been there. Maybe you've got some family in town. Maybe you've got some friends who haven't yet discovered the magic that is board gaming. Or maybe you've just had a long week at work and it's time for a break. However it happened, it's game time and you need something for the occasion. Enter gateway games. Yes, games that are designed and really help you get new people into games and that are simple to understand, simple rules, but then the fun part comes from the application of how those rules lead to strategic and dynamic situations that are fun above everything else. That's right, you need a simple lightweight game that everyone can enjoy, and ideally one that you can build upon for the future. Enter Land vs. Sea, a scalable map-making game for 2 to 4 players that takes about 40 minutes to play. It's easy to pick up and difficult to master. It's easy to pick up because the base rules are so simple. Just connect the tiles in a way that makes sense. So land tiles have to be touching land tiles, sea tiles have to be touching sea tiles, or sea borders, as the case may be, trying to form complete land masses and seas. Depending on which faction you are, you score points for them. So land can score points even when it's sea's turn if a complete landmass is made. Sure, you get extra points for having these little X's on the particular landmass or sea that you completed, but it's really not much more complicated than that. It's difficult to master in that there are many combinations and arrangements that can be made. Attention you have to pay to other players is also needed for peak gameplay, and most importantly, there are 3 additional rule sets that can be added onto the game that really layer up the, I wouldn't even say the complexity so much, but certainly the difficulty as far as strategy is concerned. Because once you've gotten an idea of the core base game, it's really easy to add in the extra rules. That's right, you can bait your non-gamer friends into playing with you. Then after you've gotten them comfortable over a few basic games, you can switch it up by adding all of the additional rules. They will be hardcore gamers in no time, and probably none the wiser that you've baited them and switched them. Sounds pretty great, right? And honestly, it is. But there are a few things you also probably want to know before you buy. The first of which is, how does the game actually play? What does it play like? Well, as I mentioned, all the players are working to create a map, as you see in front of me. Sometimes you're working together, sometimes opposed, and you score points by creating and completing seas and land masses. The land player scores points for completed land masses, and the sea player for seas. And it doesn't matter who completed those things, that player gets points for those completions. The 2-player version of the game is generally just that straightforward, reminding me a bit of the game Go. Don't get mad at me for saying that, but at least until you add the additional rules in, it does feel similar to that, where it's very straightforward, very simple, but then the complexity comes in how you want to do things. Now, the 4-player version works just like the 2-player, except for you're in 2 teams. So probably not a cultural reference here that a lot of people will appreciate, but whenever you're playing 4-player, for those of you who like to throw bones, this version is very, like, loose sense reminds me of playing dominoes in terms of team strategy. You can't talk the table, things like that, right? Don't worry if you're not getting that reference. So we'll get to the additional rules here in a second, but first I want to talk about the 3-person game here and some things about it that are a little bit different. So longtime board game fans are going to be quite familiar with the various games that really have a sweet spot in the terms of a number of players. And while a game might say that it's for some number of players, but often in reality, it's actually best if played with a certain number, and it's not actually good throughout the entire range. If you played a lot of board games, you've almost certainly ran into this, even if you're not quite aware of it at the time. I think most of us longtime board game players, though, have come to appreciate that this is just a difficult thing in game design and something that we've come to kind of expect. But I will say that also game designers, as we'll see here with Land vs. Sea, game designers are trying very much to address this issue. So Land vs. Sea has gone significantly out of their way to address and hopefully resolve this issue by adding in / changing some of its mechanics when playing with 3 players. In this mode, the 3rd player is the cartographer, noted by this symbol here. And while Land vs. Sea players simply attempt to make land masses, if they're land, sea masses if they're sea, I got that backwards, but you know what I mean. The cartographer is more concerned with the details of the map. So they are score points by connecting mountain chains and large coral reefs. This is one of the additional rules, in fact, that is modified in the 3-player version. So this is one of the additional rules, even if you're playing 2-player or 4-player, you can add this in. It's just modified a little bit for the 3-player version so that only the cartographer scores points whenever a mountain tile is placed next to another mountain tile, or whenever a coral tile is placed next to another coral tile. So just like when all seas are completed, the sea player gets points. And just like when land tiles are completed, the land player gets points. Whenever you have connecting coral or mountains, the cartographer gets points. The other additional rules include things like waypoints, where you'll just place a waypoint here, and all you're trying to do is incentivize other players to close off that area. And if they do, the waypoint token goes back to the player who placed it, and the player who closed off that landmass or sea, doesn't matter who it is, could even be the original player, they will score an additional point. This is just another little bit of added layer of complexity. Doesn't honestly change things a whole lot unless you're hyper competitive, and that one couple of points you're going to get per game is really going to change things. And obviously as the skill level goes up, you'll end up scoring those points a lot more often, and that's at least what my group found. The other rule, optional rule here, is with trade routes. So you have both sea trade routes and land trade routes, and as these are connected, whenever you place a tile adjacent next to either a boat or caravan that are, essentially standing in place of a trade route, you score 2 extra points. I should also mention here that the volcano/whirlpool tile is also part of the base game and comes into play under a specific set of circumstances that I'm not really going to go into here because my reviews are reviews, not really how-to plays. There are some great ones out there for this game already if you're looking for how to play. So a basic understanding of the game, its rules, and how to play out of the way. What do I think of Land vs. Sea? Would I recommend it? The short answer is yes. For $30, which is what this is going for where I live right now, I would absolutely recommend this game to others. I did enjoy my time playing. I think this game does a great job of being a very simple to play game in its most basic format, with the most of its complexity being kind of layered onto that at the strategic level, which is honestly, generally speaking, just really good game design. You can up the complexity and still have really good game design, but at its core, having a game where the rules are very simple, but then the interaction of how the rules kind of work, creating like strategy that somewhat flows from that, is really just peak game design in most situations. So similar to such classic games as chess or Go, where the rules, again, are very easy to understand, and then there's the hidden complexity of the strategy that is involved. It also works quite well in the way that you can add the rules in as you become more comfortable with the core gameplay. This should take no more than one game, honestly, for more experienced board gamers, but it might take you 2 or 3 if you're a little bit less experienced. But the whole idea is that the game does feel, continually interesting. Once you get the basics down, you'll want to add, especially if you're a hardcore gamer like I am, you'll want to add all of the extra rules. And it doesn't feel like, oh no, we're playing a different game now. It's very natural and kind of flows. And you're like, oh, cool. I had no idea that this symbol here stood for something. I will also mention here, as I always do, that the rule book is very well put together. I would rate it as very good. Not quite great, not outstanding, peak, whatever, but it is very good. There are cases where there are a few too many words when maybe a picture or some iconography could be used and it would have sufficed, but I'm honestly being a bit pedantic here, as the rulebook is easily better than most of its competitors as far as I'm concerned, and I read rule books basically for a living, so I've read many rule books, so it's really well done here. The only real con that I have with Land vs. Sea is that while it gives a noble effort towards dealing with the issue of having awkward number of players at some point, in this case 3 players, well, it's clear still that the game is designed for 2 teams, whether that's 2 players, you're 1 player on each side, or 2 players on each side, or what have you. It does come up a bit short when the cartographer is, in play. In play testing, the core issue that I found is that the cartographer, who plays by a completely different set of rules than the other 2 players, has a very straightforward play style and can generally score points every single turn when they place a tile. This meant that with all of our 3-person playthroughs with a cartographer, they were always handedly winning, and they were also continually scoring points pretty much every round. Actually, I think just about every round. Sometimes even when being ganged up on by the other 2 players, they still were ahead by a significant amount. Now, knowing this, you could very easily assign a cartographer to a new player, the youngest person at the table, the least experienced with gaming or what have you. And honestly, that could be a boon for you in certain ways, because if you have someone who's brand new at board games, giving them a very straightforward, easy way to score points is going to be a great thing and will probably work out just fine. It could also be that the roles of land versus sea simply have a higher skill floor than does the cartographer. I'm very open to that. I would have to play tens, if not hundreds of games to really be able to tell you that for sure. And that's a little bit more than I can do for a simple review. And actually on that note, again, it could be that the land and sea simply have a higher skill floor, and they might also have a higher skill ceiling. So they might be able to outplay the cartographer if they're more advanced players, more advanced certainly than I am. I would ask any experienced land versus sea players out there to let me know down in the comments, actually, if you've had a similar experience in this, if you disagree with me and why. Just elaborate a little bit. Don't give me a short post that I'm not going to be able to do anything with. If you give me some good explanations or what have you, maybe a lot of people can, so we can get a little bit of consensus going, I'll actually pin one of those comments so other people can see it. But as far as I can tell, that is certainly one of the drawbacks of the game. I really appreciate that they're trying to address the situation where there's an awkward number of players and still make it fun. I still think it's fine. It's just not super competitive kind of board game play that, because it is very, as my friend would say, asymmetric. Okay. The drawbacks or the cons, if you will, of land versus sea, though, I think mostly have to do with the flavor. Beside that one thing, it has to do with the flavoring or the style of the game. Maybe you don't like the geometric, kind of having to turn and fit shapes in. Some people just aren't going to be into that. Maybe you don't care about the artwork, but other than that, there's really not much that I can say bad about the game, and again, not that I'm trying to trash it, but there's not really any critiques that I particularly have. I think that everything is very straightforward. I really love the being able to add on the various layers, start with a basic. It's an easy way to learn the game, easy way to pick it up, and it's also incredibly compact. This is definitely one that I would consider taking on travel with me, because while you do need a large play, area, relatively large, not huge, it packs very small, all in this box here. So that's another thing that I really like about it. But overall, hopefully I've given a good enough understanding of the game so you can kind of understand and make the decision for yourself as far as will this be a game for you. I will say, I'm not going over all of the rules here. Certain tiles will allow you to place a second tile. Certain tiles will let you steal a tile from another player. So there are mechanics here that I'm not going super in depth on, but again, we're not really trying to quite do a how-to video. Just know that there's a bit of added complexity as well. If you complete a area with all land, and I think that's an illegal move, but let's say we went here, you do get to place the volcano tile. That's one way you can swing the points one direction or the other. But again, I think that most of the drawbacks, most of the cons here are really going to come down to personal preference on, do you like a style of game like this? Some people really don't like the complexity of having to figure out, how does this piece go? There can be a little bit of analysis paralysis. I am someone who's very prone to that. I did have that come up a couple of times, but it wasn't too bad. I did have to get over myself and remind myself, hey, we're just playing quick here. Put some pieces down. So, there is a little bit of that, but honestly, not really a detractor at all. I would also like to let you know, if you're anything like me, whenever you really like a game, you always want an expansion. At least I do. And there actually is a planned expansion that I think we're going to be finding some news about in the not too distant future from Good Games Publishing. If that's something you're interested in, make sure to check them out and keep an eye out, because I'm sure they'll have some emails going out about that. And maybe if enough people like this video and you guys are interested in this sort of thing, maybe we could look at reviewing that when it comes out. Anyways, guys, I do recommend Land vs. Sea. I think it's a really good gateway game. Certainly very enjoyable for me. I would also say about the company, Good Games Publishing, I did get to play some of their other games while at Gen Con, and I personally really enjoyed the games that I did play. So give them a look, give them a check out, purchase it if you think you might be interested. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Anyways, I appreciate all of you guys watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.